Boy, indeed. We come now to, if there are no further points of order, the 10-minute rule motion. Mr. Gareth Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision about the entitlement of employees to benefit from profits made by their employers in certain circumstances, to require a company to allocate one seat on its board to an employee representative and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, if you work hard for a company, if you help it succeed and make a profit, then surely the owners should share a little of those profits with you and other employees. The best companies already do. Indeed, the best companies also want their staff involved in decision-making at the highest level, using their knowledge and expertise to help plot company strategy and keep senior management on their toes. In truth, Britain has a productivity and a fairness problem. Despite numerous initiatives, we are behind our main competitors in terms of productivity, whilst at the same time, inequality continues to grow. Changing the way companies work, how they take key decisions, and who is involved in these decisions is one essential for sorting these problems out. We lag behind the rest of the G7 and most of the G20 in how productive our economy is. Indeed, for 2010 to 2014, annual average labour productivity was lower in Britain than in any other G20 or G7 country. And whilst executive pay has shot up in recent years, the incomes of the rest of the workforce have struggled to keep pace, even with historically low levels of inflation. Part of the solution, then, involves sharing a little more of the power and profits of business with staff at all levels. Companies like John Lewis share some of the profits they make with all their staff, giving the most junior as well as the most senior staff direct incentives to work even harder, think imaginatively, and go the extra mile. Employees also get to help choose the board, again giving staff direct responsibility for selecting those at the very top whose decisions they'll have to follow. Ensuring the concerns of staff get heard at the top table is particularly important, as it's staff who depend particularly on a stable business for their livelihood. Absent owners or disengaged shareholders may have other priorities. In countries like France and Germany, this shared capitalism is a standout feature of their business practice. Companies like Deutsche Bank have staff on their German boards who play an important and positive role, while in France, firms of 50 or more employees benefit from up to 5% of profits being shared with all staff, except recent arrivals. Indeed, French governments of all political persuasions, right and left, have a long history of encouraging profit sharing amongst their companies. I understand laws on profit sharing have existed for more than 50 years there, requiring a mandatory profit sharing scheme to be negotiated with French employees. Companies in France can choose to distribute rewards, either as a flat rate to employees, in proportion to wages, in proportion to the hours worked in the previous year, or a scheme based on a combination of all those principles. Arguably, the prevalence of profit sharing makes an important contribution to higher levels of French productivity. Between 2010 and 2014, France had levels of productivity per hour almost double that of the UK. Employees on boards, Mr. Speaker, are the norm in many other successful countries. In Denmark, France, Finland, Norway, Sweden, for example, as well as Germany, at least one director is elected by the employees. In Norway, favoured by some for being outside of the European Union, once a business has 30 employees, one director has to be chosen by the workforce. In Sweden, another key UK ally, once a company has 25 employees, around a third of directors have to be workers in the business. IKEA, that staple of the British high street, has worker directors on its Swedish board. In France, private companies with 1,000 or more employees, or 5,000 with 1,000 or more employees, or 5,000 or more if they're worldwide, have to have at least one or two staff on the board, while a third of all board members on state-owned companies are elected by the staff. In Germany, a third of the supervising board in companies with 500 or more employees are staff, but this rises to half in companies with more than 2,000 employees. Now, in this country, we have for a long time quietly been happy to endorse workers on boards, albeit so long as they are overseas businesses. EDF, France's leading nuclear energy company, and then in the process of being handed the keys to Hinkley Point, has a board in which 1/3 of its members are elected by its workers. Indeed, as a French company, EDF also has a profit-sharing scheme. Deutsche Bahn, who run through their subsidiaries much of our rail network, have 6 directors elected by their staff. Even though both are key players in British markets, particularly in England, English workers in these companies do not get to vote for board members. It's just German and French staff. So in short, if German workers are good enough to sit on a company board, if French workers are good enough to sit on a company board, if Swedish workers are good enough to sit on a company board, isn't it time that English and British workers were given their chance too? There are a number of companies operating too in tough markets in the UK who have demonstrated that employee directors work. John Lewis is one, but FTSE 100 Group First Group are another. Mick Barker is the employee director, Mr. Speaker, of First Group. He's been a railway man for 39 years and is employed as a train driver for First Great Western. He serves on the board and various other committees of the board. Indeed, First Group encourage their operating companies across the UK and North America to elect employee directors to their boards so that, in their own words, the views and opinions of staff are represented at the very highest level. Now, in the UK, Mr. Speaker, the response to the concern about high levels of executive pay and falling workers' wages has seen some debate about broadening the membership of remuneration committees of big companies to include staff. Indeed, the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills considered in 2011 reforming the remuneration committees of boards, but sadly, nothing happened. Analysis from the House of Commons Library suggests that if a French-style profit-sharing system was introduced here in the UK, corporate household names could be allocating to their staff an extra £500 to £1,200 a year once profits have been declared. Not huge sums of money to those at the very top of those businesses, but helping to reward better the collective hard work that is required for any business to succeed. It does not add to business costs, nor does it undermine pay differentials between skilled and unskilled workers, or between founder and recent employees. But it does offer an incentive to all to cooperate together to support business success and achieve higher returns for both staff and owners alike. As the IPPR have noted, if every private sector company in the UK with 500 or more employees had a profit-sharing scheme, over 8 million people in 3,000 British firms could benefit from hundreds of pounds a year extra. Company law, Mr. Speaker, in my view, needs to change to reflect modern Britain. Employees' crucial stake in the success of their employer needs recognition in law. Strong businesses, better rewards for staff, higher productivity and a less unequal country. This bill is a step towards those ambitions, and I commend it to the House.
Order. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as have that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Mr. Chris Evans, Ms. Meg Hillier, Mr. Steve Reid, Ms. Louise Ellman, Mr. Adrian Bailey, Ms. Rachel Maskell, Mr. Stephen Twigg, Mr. Mark Hendrick, Mr. Stephen Doughty, Ms. Kate Osamore, Mr. John Woodcock, and myself.
Mr. Gareth Thomas.
Profit Sharing and Company Governance Employees Participation Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 11th of March, sir.
Friday the 11th of March. Thank you.